Hello viewers. Today I'm going to go over what makes battery electric vehicles incredibly efficient, rather than focus on the inaccurate and negative propaganda out there to try and convince people that carbon needed to mine for battery metals is somehow worse than gas or diesel, because the science says it isn't, and it's far cleaner. However, we're not focusing on that. This video is purely on perspective for how much cleaner electricity is for generation and transmission than fossil fuels. Now remind you, a battery is just an energy storage device, not the energy itself. The battery can be recharged thousands of times, it should last for the life of the car, and the heavy earth metals inside a battery can be recycled. They're not burned into the atmosphere after each charge like oil or diesel are. But again, that discussion on how green batteries are is a completely different discussion. This video is purely on the energy itself. So to that end, I'm going to put up a diagram for this discussion to make it easier to absorb. This diagram basically represents the carbon outputs required for traditional gasoline and diesel technology just to get the energy into your vehicle. The incredible dirty nature just getting the product moved around is what makes it so amazing. We haven't ditched this method long ago. Look at all those carbon output and waste of resources versus the clean electric grid. First of all, oil and gasoline products. You have the refining process, which extracts the petroleum resource out of the earth. In today's world, easily accessible raw, sweet crude, those reserves are dwindling, and we now rely more frequently on fracking shale, like you find in North Dakota, USA, or squeezing bitumen sediments out of ancient sands, like you have in Alberta, Canada. This produces tremendous amounts of carbon wastes and other pollution, because you have to use tons of electric and chemical energy to run these refineries and pumping mechanisms to get this type of oil. It isn't as easy as just pumping it out of the ground anymore. Beyond that, you can see each step of the way is incredibly carbon intensive. Throughout the refining process, it must be transported by pipeline, railroad, or trucks to various locations. This requires massive carbon use just to transport, with each step, multiple times. Once it's in the pump at your gas station, it uses electricity for the 3 to 5 minutes it takes to pump the product into your vehicle. That doesn't sound like much, alone. But you multiply this for every single vehicle needing to refuel on Earth every single day, it adds up tremendously. Also, just think of the hundreds of rail vehicles pushed by diesel-powered locomotives carrying Alberta bitumen to refineries. Then the immense electricity or gas resources it takes to burn the various elements out of the petroleum to end up with your diesel, your jet fuels and kerosene, or your gasoline at the refinery. Sometimes refining these heavier oils, like Alberta bitumen, takes more than one step. For example, you extract it out of the sands, and then you send it to refineries for further refinement. It's all incredibly carbon and energy intensive. Oil refining has, in fact, gotten dirtier over the decades. In the 1970s, virtually all oil was sweet, light crude in reserves relatively close to the surface in the earth, not hidden in shale rock or oil deposits in sands like we extract it today. But look, the electric vehicle diagram on your left. To fuel an EV, all you need is the long-lasting electrical grid. In the future, we can get electricity from 100% renewable sources. Many places like Quebec in Canada, Manitoba, and here in Ontario, Canada, are already getting closer to that 100% range. Basically, we're using solar, wind, and yes, this includes nuclear. When electrical energy is generated, it simply goes into the static grid, and it's delivered to you at the speed of light. This grid isn't mechanical trucks that must deliver oil to a gas station on a regular basis. It doesn't require rail cars or energy-intensive refining processes. Even a nuclear reactor doesn't consume that many resources to operate relative to a petroleum refinery. Despite the reputation of nuclear, it's quite clean overall, and it isn't billowing out carbon and other elements into the atmosphere to pollute it. Sure, the electrical grid does require resources to build, but it's static, and by static, I mean we build an electrical infrastructure in a neighborhood, or even transmission lines that travel hundreds or even thousands of kilometers. Generally speaking, those lines will be there 30, 50, and in many cases much longer, many years longer. That is the magic of electrical energy. Once the grid is up, you get energy transmission at the speed of light, and it can travel thousands of kilometers if necessary, without the need to truck it or put it on rail cars or large ship vessels and burn carbon just to get the delivery of the energy resource. This kind of puts into perspective how clean EVs are, even when you start to take the energy needed to mine heavy earth metals for batteries into consideration. Clearly, electric technology is the cleanest tech we have for the future of transport. It erases the need to transport the energy product as it travels at the speed of light. Electrons are quite the environmentally friendly method to transport energy, it turns out. And yes, I hope this diagram was useful, and this video has put into perspective just how much cleaner electric generation is for transmission. And it's also cleaner to produce. As a world, we are moving toward renewables and nuclear and away from old resources like coal. So there you have it. That's why EVs are cleaner. It's not just the fact that they have no tailpipe and zero emissions. It's the fact that the delivery of the energy itself and the production of it is such a cleaner process. Oil and gas are so incredibly energy intensive. My graphic should have proved that. Just from a refining and transport perspective, with electricity, you don't need thousands and thousands of transport trucks delivering that last leg of product to stations. You just flip a switch and energy flows through the electrical grid. You don't need massive ships crossing oceans with oil product on it. You can have electric productions in facilities 1,000 kilometers away, and it flows through the grid instantly at the speed of light. You don't need to expend huge energy resources, including electric energy expenses, as you have in petroleum refining businesses. The mining process, for example, to get materials for a nuclear reactor are relatively benign compared to the massive extraction system to get oil through shale, fracking, and bitumen sand separation. So yes, in summary, electric energy is the future. It is the way to go. We don't have time to waste. And now is the time to move to EVs. Thank you for watching.